So hello everyone, welcome back to WOBA Talks. It's our summer edition. Most of the people are already on vacation, but we are up and running still. My name is Nedim Jahic. I'm a member of Women on Boards Adria team, and with us today we have an entire team of WOBA, of course, Gina, Sanya, Jana, Angela, Azra, and everyone. And Anna and the entire team is here in Azra, and we will have plenty of people who register for this important session. Today with us we have Ilijana Vavan. I met Ilijana, I think, 2 years ago in Sarajevo, and I was quite impressed by the way how she spoke about the region, about her career and the work, and how she inspires people around the world, especially in our region, to move up, to make something, to reflect on what the work they are doing, and to engage with our communities. We'll be having some people joining in during this couple of first minutes, so please be patient with this. Ilijana Vavan is internationally accomplished IT and cybersecurity executive with over 30 years of experience in companies like Microsoft, Oracle, Kaspersky, Milestone Systems, Checkpoint Technologies. She holds masters in computer science from University of Twente, which is in the Netherlands. Speaks 4 languages. Currently lives in Munich with her family. For this opportunity, I had the opportunity. I read a couple of interviews with Ilijana just to catch up more on what she already shared with media in the Balkans. So I believe it will be interesting discussion. For me, what is very impressive when it comes to Ilijana is how she manages to stay connected with the tech and business community in the Balkans. How she contributes to different debates and engages with our community here locally. And this entire idea of staying motivated as member as somebody coming in from our region and actually staying connected with the Western Balkans, as we call it now, or former Yugoslavia, as we tend to call it in a more or less formal way. Ilijana, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So thank you for taking this time, especially in July. I know you have a busy schedule also, and I believe this is huge privilege for people who are tuning in. So let's start before we dive into topics like cyber threats, women in tech, and many others. We will have plenty of things to share. Please stop whenever you feel we went over the schedule. We will also receive questions from the audience, so I believe it will be interesting. Our team developed a couple of things that we would like to discuss with you, and hopefully we will get to interesting points for the audience also. So first things first, you are deeply involved in our community in the Western Balkans. Despite everything else, busy schedule you have on your work regularly. What drives you to give back to the community, or how do we use what you're doing, getting involved in the community and bringing more people, especially from the diaspora of the region, engaging with professionals in the Western Balkans?
So first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here and talk to everybody and answer the questions. And I hope this conversation can inspire at least one person. I will be happy to. With the result, let me put it this way. So why am I doing this, and why am I still connected to where I come from, basically Bosnia, but also Serbia, Croatia, and entire Balkans is one simple reason. First of all, I come from there. So I grew up in Yugoslavia. I grew up in Sarajevo. And everything I learned in my life, everything I got from my childhood helped me actually to become who I am today. So that's when I was shaped and formed for the first time. Second thing is, I think it's in my blood, in my DNA, to share and give back to community. I believe it's also my obligation to transfer the knowledge and experience and skills I have to the younger generation. And for me, it's the ultimate goal, basically, to see people from younger generation to whom I can help and mentor and coach raise to the heights of, sky's the limit, basically, or It's just a big pleasure for me to see people growing and helping them to grow, younger generations. Absolutely, yes.
So when you compare kids, youth, young people today compared to some generation that had the opportunity to learn in 80s or 90s? What changed the most when it comes to education and the approach we have?
You know, when I was growing up, when I was going to school, when I was studying, we didn't have internet. We were growing up playing outside. Education was mainly in the schools. And the only source of information outside of the formal schooling system was the library. If you were happy to live in a big city that had a couple of really good libraries with a lot of different books where you could find information you're looking for, then you could really educate yourself outside of the schooling system. If you were unlucky to grow up in some small village that didn't have a library, then the only education you could get is the formal education you was getting from your teachers and probably your parents. Even the TV, when I was a kid, we had only 2 TV stations, and later on we got a third one. So it was like, I think it was Radio Televizija Sarajevo number 1, number 2, and then the number 3 appeared at some point in time, okay? And then later on, obviously, you know, we got the MTV and Eurosport and the cable TV, which was a big thing for us. Today, kids are growing with internet. That basically means they have entire world to their disposal. If you are interested in something, then you go on the internet, you find information. You can literally find PhDs on any topic on the internet. And when my son was going to school, I permanently had I don't know if I should call them fights, but big arguing with him because he was not reading books. He was permanently on his iPad, on his MacBook, on his iPhone, you know, like, and I'm like, you have to read books, you have to read books. And he's telling me like, Mom, I can find any information I need for my school on the internet. I'm doing this research for whatever topic I have for my school. And then I realized, hey, you know, the generation changed. The current education is based online. My son keeps telling me, like, you know, every time I come to his room, I see him watching something on YouTube and I go crazy, like, you again on internet, you are not reading books. But basically, he's looking at the courses that are on YouTube. Mm-hmm. There are so many online things you can find these days. That's the one thing. On the other thing, you know, the second thing, which is, I think, beneficial from the current world to anybody who is being educated right now, you can collaborate online. So mm-hmm. your world has expanded to anywhere in the world. So if you are studying one specific topic and there is the best experts on that topic on the other end of the world, you can connect to that person and do the project together, which gives you an opportunity to learn much more than if you are just closed in one community, which is basically where you are growing up. And I think that's the significant change that happened. And that is something that I see as a benefit of the new generation and new world. So sometimes I actually envy those guys.
Hey, we constantly now have this discussion with AI and changes that are happening globally. Mm-hmm. That new generation is studying at universities that are preparing them for jobs that won't exist at some point. But was that ever a case? Is this like a new thing? Like when it comes, you know, to the discussion about what we are learning at universities, how does it really prepare us for the real world? Should universities do this, or what's your approach to this?
You know, the world is constantly changing. The world is on the move. And this is nothing new. This happened 100 years ago. If you look at what happened, just let's take 100 years, from 1920s to 2020s. What changed? You know, like my grandparents, they didn't have a phone, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have a car, they didn't have any of that. In only 2 or 3 generations, we are now flying to the moon, literally. You know, like all of these rich people like Elon Musk, they're having rockets, planning the life on the Mars and doing all of that. So whatever you learn today may disappear tomorrow in the form that you're learning today. But that doesn't mean that you will be jobless. That only means that you will be able to use whatever you're learning today as a base to develop yourself further to the next technological revolution, let me put it this way. So coming back to your question about AI, what is AI? I don't see AI replacing humans in all fields. I see AI as a tool that humans should be using to enable them, to free them, basically, free their time for the things that really matter to them. And I'll give you one example. If you're writing an email today, you get auto suggestions by your Outlook or your Word or whatever you are using. You know, what should be the end of the sentence you're writing. So basically, if you can use that, it saves your time. So you can focus on something else which matters more to you. So for me, every threat is an opportunity. This is what I'm trying to say.
But if we get back to the, I don't know, invention of fax machine, you know, it gained some speed in the business process, you know, but then the expectation of your boss and your company is like
changing.
It's changing in terms of speeding up things that you do. Will it actually gives us the time, or is it just in a service of getting job done? You know, like are we going to actually have more time for ourselves?
If you use it in a smart way, it will give you more time. But more time to do things that matter to you. And what do I mean by that? I'm gonna give you a very simple example of something which is long time ago, but I think it's quite good metaphor to understand what am I talking about. Before invention of washing machines, okay, usually women were going somewhere and they were washing everything by hand. Washing everything by hand for a family of I don't know how many members takes forever. It's like full day job. Today it's 5 minutes job. You just you collect the clothes, you put them in the washing machine, you press the button, you're done. In the same way, anything else that is going to be replaced by AI will give us free time to do something else. Look at the factories, for example. I live in Munich. It's where the BMW factory is. And I had the opportunity and privilege to visit the factory and actually walk around. I get a tour on that. And if you go there are almost no people in the factory. It's all machine done. It's all robots. You see those robots going back and forward and putting pieces of the car together, painting them, you know, controlling them, all of that. You only see people basically pressing the buttons to control the robots. And this is exactly the transformation that happened thanks to the machines. But BMW, since the invention of those robots, has actually grown in the number of people, number of employees working there. Why? Because the cars had got more complex. Like if you take the BMW as an example, 50 years ago, it didn't have almost any digitalization in it. It was all mechanics. Today, BMW employs a lot of engineers who are actually working on the software that is controlling the entire engine. If you open the BMW or any other car for that matter, I'm just taking this example because I live in Munich. If you open the car, if you open the engine, then you see there are almost no mechanical parts. It's all hermetically closed. If something breaks, you need a computer actually to connect to the engine to understand which part of engine is malfunctioning. And exactly in this way, it will happen with anything else. So we are only changing the jobs from doing mechanical work to doing electrical work, from doing whatever to whatever, but the jobs will not disappear. Even though, we all hear threatening, foreseeing of the future. Oh, we're gonna, AI will replace all of us. It's impossible. Yesterday I was reading something. I think it was on a mathematical or program. It was even the programming Olympics, where the AI was competing against people, and some of the best engineers have actually won against AI. So it still doesn't have that intelligence, that intuition. The logic that we humans have cannot be so, at least not yet, learned by the machines. So I think the best is the good combination, and to take advantage of using AI to our advantage and not as replacing us by AI.
Great. that makes a lot of sense. But so when we were discussing your background and everything you did in your life, we got to your university and the fact that you finished your studies in the Netherlands, but also prior had the experience of at universities in Yugoslavia. So at that time, was this a rare thing? Was it a normal thing? How your generation actually moved past this barrier of mobility in that time compared to today?
What do you mean by mobility? Moved by mobility?
In a sense of moving from our educational system to the educational system in the West
okay. Okay, so first of all, I grew up in Yugoslavia, and I was educated in Yugoslav educational system. Back then, the system was based on getting general knowledge as a solid base first, and then going deep into the topic that you want to specialize and become somebody. Okay, so it was very broad and very strict, and I believe we got much more knowledge than what I've seen in Western Europe. So when I moved from Sarajevo to the Netherlands, for me, it was like the system was different in a sense that they didn't learn as much and as broad as we did. And the depth was there, but even the depth wasn't as complex and difficult and thorough as what I was used to in Sarajevo. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that the system in former Yugoslavia, wherever it is, or entire Balkan region basically has changed since the fall of Yugoslavia, and everybody moved to the Bologna system, and all of it westernized, in my opinion. And even though it made some things easier for students, mm-hmm. I believe the other system was better. And I don't want to sound like those nostalgic people who see everything in the past was better than today. I just have a feeling that the new system does not give you as much knowledge as the old one. And what kind of knowledge I'm talking about? I'm not talking about the knowledge like you have to learn something in sense of you take the book, you learn, you pass the exam. I'm more talking about the system I grew up was teaching us how to think, was teaching us how to improvise. If you have it was more solution-oriented approach. We really had to think about how do you solve an issue? How do you solve something which is outside of the system? If the system breaks, what do you do? In the new way, or when I was studying in the Netherlands, which is this Western approach, it was more you follow the rules, you follow the procedure, and you're done. They don't apply the improvisation techniques. They don't think out of the box, even though whenever you talk in the Western companies, they would tell you, think out of the box, think out of the box. But the educational system is not really teaching you to think out of the box, is my experience. So maybe it changed again because it was a long time ago when I was studying. But I'm seeing also a younger generation, in my opinion, don't get enough knowledge in the way that they really go in depth and try to solve complex solutions as we did back then.
So your career, it was like you moved countries, cultures, companies. What would be your advice when it comes to when it's the right time to move on, change company, change environment? How did you make these decisions when your career was progressing, actually?
So when you start getting bored.
In what sense?
In any sense. So first of all, what I believe is very important is whenever you start your career, no matter in which field you are, technical or any other, you have to have a goals. You have to know what are you looking for in your life. Do you want a job that is good paying, but it doesn't matter if it's interesting or not? Do you want to be in a leadership position, or you rather be an expert in a certain field? You have to define for yourself what is that you want. And then go for that, and go for that with your heart. Do not like people talk about loyalty, specifically if you work for big corporations, they will be talking about loyalty. They will be talking about belonging. They will be talking about how good it is if you work, like you overwork, you work in the midnight, No, you have to think about what's good for you. You have to keep the healthy balance. That's another thing. If you notice that you only work and you don't have a time for family, you don't have a time for yourself, you feel like your energy is going down and you don't have a time to refill your energies, that's also time to quit. If you feel that you're doing a job that is very boring, it doesn't give you any development, neither as a person nor as an expert, I would change. But again, it depends on the personality. For me, it's very important that I have an opportunity to develop to the next level, whatever it is, whatever I'm defining as a next level. If I'm not challenged enough, but I just do the job like, every day the same and the same and the same, then I have to change something. But that's me. Some people are happy by doing the same job every day if they can work from 9 to 5 and then go home. So, if I can say what is the advice, I would say do something what makes you feel good. And the moment you don't feel good at your work, change it.
What was it like entering places like Microsoft, Oracle, not just maybe okay as a woman, of course, in tech, but also as someone coming from the Balkans? Was it like was this an obstacle, or how would you see it?
Okay, so both. So I'll first answer the question coming from Balkans. So I was studying in the Netherlands, and the war happened to Yugoslavia, specifically Sarajevo, where I come from. And I was out with some of my Dutch friends, so I was the only non-Dutch, present on the table. And then somebody came and started talking to us. Obviously, at the time, I didn't speak Dutch. I was speaking in English. Mm-hmm. And then he said, like, oh, where do you come from? I said, well, I come from Boston. And he said, what do you do here? I study computer science. What? I study computer science. Do you have computers there? And I was like, I look at him, and then I realized he was serious. It was a serious question. It was, it was not... She didn't joke with me like, hey, you guys are fighting there. You must be primitive,
Yeah.
But it was really like, oh, you have computers there? And I was like, and then I realized he's serious. But then I answered in a way that I was not so nice to him, but I couldn't stand it. So I was like, no, we don't have computers there. We are still driving horses. We don't even have electricity. But, I just happen to be one of those rich parents who send me abroad to study. I just... And in the end, he figured out that I'm being sarcastic. So he apologized. He said, I'm sorry, but I really didn't know anything about the country and I shouldn't be assuming something like that. And, so basically I gave that, it was a man, boy, person, a lesson not to assume anything about foreign country if he doesn't know anything about that country, because in any country, there are developments on this level or that level, but this guy just assumed because there is a war going on in Yugoslavia, we must be some, I don't know, whatever he assumed, that he seriously thought we don't have computer science. So that was, and many people thought that Balkans, because the only news at the time, and remember at the time there was no internet, the only source of news was TV. And on the TV, the only pictures about Yugoslavia were burning villages, burning cities, people, on refuge trying to get out of the war zone and everything. So there was a lot of negativism. And then I moved, obviously I finished my studying, I started working and everything. And I was working for Oracle at the time. So I was a woman and coming from Bosnia, okay. And I had like, back then I was working as a pre-sales consultant, and you didn't have like online installations. You had to take a physical floppies, CDs, boxes with books, instructions, everything with you to a customer, and then, open it up there, show the whatever. So I'm coming there with that box, and the guy, and I'm calling, you are the reception of a big company, and then you say, hey, I'm this, that and that person. I'm looking for blah, blah. And then he's calling somebody who I look for, and he said, your courier is here with the post. He didn't even come up with an idea that a woman can be a technical consultant, and specifically not if that person is not speaking perfect Dutch, which I just started learning Dutch. So that was one thing. Then they would ask me, once I learned Dutch and I was pretty good at that. So I would get questions even from the people working in the big companies who were my business partners about Bosnia, like, oh, okay, so, but in Bosnia, like, everything is primitive and backwards and like that. And then and I'm like, what makes you think so? Like, I come from Bosnia. Yes, but you were probably born here. It's your parents who came as whatever, gastarbeiters. And they were pretty shocked if I would tell them I'm only 1 year in Holland or 2 years in whatever I was at the time. Very recent I came, and I actually came from that Bosnia that is now burning in the war. So I had a lot of negative experiences, but I learned how to turn those experiences in something positive, because I would make people feel sorry for what they said and what they assumed. Because typically they assume you don't have a knowledge because you're a woman, you cannot have a technical knowledge. And I did. And I had better knowledge than they did. So I would prove them wrong. And the moment I proved them wrong because they had assumptions, I just didn't care about their assumptions. I was still very nice. I was polite, and I was knowledgeable. And that was my weapon and my power. So I could change the things around, and they would feel guilty. And then they would do an extra step for me, extra mile. They would go extra mile for whatever I needed from them because they felt guilty, as they assumed me completely wrong. So that's my experience. And if I can give an advice or anything to anybody coming from Balkans or any other country, and somebody else is assuming they are lower and less knowledgeable or anything like that, just let them assume that and then prove them wrong. And it works.
Did you have the opportunity to see this latest movie documentary from Jasmine Lajbanic about Emer Bloom?
Unfortunately, I haven't, but I've heard it, and that's on my list to watch it, because Emer Bloom is somebody who did something unbelievable, and I'm very proud. Actually, I felt part of the Energo Invest at the time. I was a child, obviously, and I was still going to school and everything, but I need to watch that movie.
Yeah, because this movie, there is a lady who was a head of IT of Energo Invest. So and these Iris computers that
Of course I do.
making. Yeah.
I was their stipendist. I had a stipendium, like scholarship, how you call it, stipendium. Yeah. At the time. Yeah. Of course I know Iris. Yeah.
How did we, like, it seems like, okay, we teach our kids too much history, like Balkans, they always say we have more history than we can absorb. And sometimes we don't have this new generation do not have the opportunity to learn about the fact that there was this Energo Invest, there were these companies who were big and who influenced globally different things. And now when you look this movie, for example, it sounds like science fiction that we had developed this type of, like, having IT sector and having this computer. And when did we lost this track? Like, how despite everyone says, like, war, conflict, 90s, but we had people who are still there. People who built this were still there or were connected and were eager to engage. And how did we lost the track? For example, for this Energo Invest, now we are lucky enough when it comes to Energo Invest that is now rebuilding and restructuring in some sense. But this is like just a glimpse of what it was when it comes to number of employees, contracts globally, and so on. I don't want to get all nostalgic, but I just want to take your take on this.
Okay, so I think, it was the war that broke it down, because war didn't happen overnight. It started basically in the 80s. I would say preparation for war started in the 80s. And I don't want to go into the full scope of, who and why and what are the interests behind and everything, but I'm going to tell you one thing which I know for the fact. And I believe it has to do with competitiveness. It has to do with we were too good and too threatening for some foreign companies. for me, it's not about politics. It's not about nationalities, religion, or anything else. It's about economical power and competition. Why am I saying this? Because you mentioned Energo Invest, but that was not the only company we had that was big and huge. My father worked for a company called Vranica. I don't know if Vranica still exists, probably not, but Vranica was a civil engineering company. At the time, they built, because this was in 70s and 80s. At the time, Middle East was just booming with oil, getting money and developing. So they were building bridges, infrastructure, electrical power plants, airports, everything. Believe it or not, in the competition of the Western and American companies, it was Vranica and other Yugoslavian civil engineering and electrical companies like Energo Invest, like what is the name? There is one big in Belgrade as well. You know, they were winning all of these tenders in the Middle East against Western European and American companies. Do you know what does that mean? You know, company coming from the socialist, communist Yugoslavia, winning tenders and building bridges, electro power plants, airports, military bases, everything in Iraq, in Kuwait, in all of these countries there. You know, and this was the educational system I'm talking about. What people, you know, when people talk about past, unfortunately, they focus on the negative things like wars. But nobody focused on the fact that in Yugoslavia, and I'm talking about this as a woman, because this was something I realized only recently. In Yugoslavia, so before the Second World War, Yugoslavia was very analphabet country. So basically between about 20% of people could read and write, 80% couldn't. After the Second World War, Tito made it as a priority to make people, proficient in reading and writing, okay? So within 10 years, he changed it to 80% who can read and write and only 20 who cannot. The same story happened with making women equal to men. Many people don't know that, but for example, in Switzerland, Germany, and many other Western European countries, women didn't have a right to vote until 75. Like in Switzerland, women get right to vote in 1975. In Germany, women didn't have a right to work, own the bank account or anything else until the 1990, I think 1989, when the Eastern Germany and Western Germany reunited again. In Yugoslavia, my mother studied, and she was a director of a company in Sarajevo, you know, 50 years ago. And a friend of mine, her mom was the governor of Narodna Banka of Bosnia and Herzegovina, you know, like a national bank. So that was normal in Yugoslavia.
Yes, but when I asked you about Energo Invest and you said that you had the scholarship there, I just think, of course you did,
Yes.
because like today we have plenty of these initiatives. We are trying to figure out
how to do them again,
how to engage. For example, women in tech. There was a number of activities here, IT girls in Bosnia, in the region, and so on. But we had this, you know, like before the system which encouraged women in tech to engage and having women who were heads of these offices and so on in these companies in the 80s and 90s is quite some part of history that we should read again.
We should repeat.
So what's something like when it comes to the fact that you held the big titles in big companies? What's something that people don't see behind this C-level high titles? You know, like the experience which comes with it, and the responsibility and the stress. And what's your take on this?
First of all, it's a very hard work. You have to be ready to work. And to work anytime, at any place. You have to be ready to take on responsibility. Leadership is a lot of responsibility because you are responsible not just for yourself, you're responsible for the others. You're responsible for the salaries of people who may have families at home and need to feed those families. If you make a mistake, strategic mistake as the CEO or CRO, whatever C-level in the company, it can cost company millions. It can cost company workplaces of those people. So it's not just, when you're an individual contributor in any company, when you're an expert in something, be it an engineer, be it a medical doctor. Okay, medical doctor, you're still responsible for people. But when you do something like, engineering or whatever, you don't feel that responsibility for that many people. But when you take the leadership position, it changes. You have to put people first. You have to take care of other people. You have to make sure that they have environment where they can actually excel and they can produce much more than they would be producing if they were in some medium or bad environment. So it's a very complex job, and sometimes it is also lonely because there are not that many people on the top. It's like a pyramid. So the higher you come, the less people there are. It's like you are climbing the mountain. The higher you come, the less oxygen there is. Similar to that. So it's lonely. It's hard work, and you have to be ready for many ad hoc situations where you have to take some decisions and you have to do what's best for the company at the moment. And you have also to be ready to make mistakes, because nobody's perfect, and take responsibility for the mistakes as well, and learn how to correct them and how to correct them quickly. That's probably the most important part.
So you met and worked with people. I read this in, I think it was Azra interview. Bill Gates. You worked with Bill Gates and many others, of course. And some advice on when you have this, so to say, inspiring leaders as bosses and everything. What's your advice to the people lower in this pyramid? How to handle their bosses? How to work with them and still keep their mental health, work balance, and everything in order?
So first of all, understand that bosses are people as well. That basically means they can be in a bad mood as well. And when they're in a bad mood, it doesn't mean they are against you. It's not personal. It can be that they have their own problems with whatever else, because on their mind, there are many more things than you and your department or your work or anything else. So I would say, depending on the situation, depending on with whom you talk, how you talk, obviously, depending on the relationship, what is your level in comparison to the level of your boss or the boss's boss, or, to whom are you talking to? So you really have to take into account that sometimes those people are very busy. They don't have a time. If you want to ask them a favor, if you want to learn something from them, think about how much time do they have, and how can you ask them something you want to know in a short way so that they can answer what you want to get. And I'll give you an example. Even I, in my position, sometimes people write me an email which is very long. They want some answer from me, but then they create a, 10 minutes, 15 minutes email. And I don't have 15 minutes to read one single email, because if I get 50 emails, each of them is 10 minutes long, that's basically 500 minutes. You understand what I mean? I don't have that time. And the higher you are in hierarchy, the less time you have. And very often those people, you mentioned Bill Gates, and they don't even read the emails. They have people who are reading their emails for them. Or, there is a filtering system how to get to the top and how to talk and to whom they talk and how they talk. So you have to be conscious of this. If you want to talk to some of those people at those levels, you have to think about, okay, what do I want from them? How do I approach them? I have to be short. I have to be to the point. I have to get their attention, and I have to make sure I get the answer. And at the same time, you have to be conscious that there may be 5 levels in between, and there are all of these filtering people that they can filter your mail, your request, your anything else before you can get to answer. So make sure it's interesting enough and it can caught their attention.
we had a number of these WOBA talks, and we always discuss about the essential about getting more women into leadership. But what comes is whenever I ask a person in position about quotas, for example, about women quotas in on boards, in many ways, people who are already there, even if they are women leaders, they would say work will get you there.
No.
So what's your opinion? Like, how do we get more women into leadership? And
first of all, work only. Obviously, you do have to work. You do have to prove you are better than anybody else. But this is valid for men and women at the same time. It doesn't matter, you know. So yes, work is important, but that's not the deciding factor. First of all, the companies have to be open for that. And the only way that the companies can become open for that is if the men who are working in the top management of these companies are willing to take women on board. So, you know, there is a saying which says behind every successful man is one woman. Okay. I would say in the corporate world, it is the opposite. You must have a man that are sponsoring taking females on board. Because if the men are against it, and the current boards are 90% consisting of men, then as a woman, you will always be rejected. So there must be at least one man who wants you in that position, who sees the value of having you instead of having somebody else. And it must be a culture of, you know, the companies have to start changing mentality. And this is why I keep talking to men and not to women when it comes to getting more women on board. Because these men have to understand, hey, the ladies, they can actually provide even better work than some men. You know, we are behind the time when the physical power was important. Why do we live in the world we live today? Because in the past, the work was done, the labor was manual, and you needed to be physically powerful to do something. Today, the labor is mainly the brain. And it's scientifically proven that female brain is equally good as a man brain. And, you know, depending on the tasks in front of you, you actually need both as a company, because we see things different than the men see them. And none of us see the full picture. So the best is to actually, and this is statistically proven, that the best companies in the world are the ones that have a mixed and balanced boards, you know, like 50-50. It could be 60% men, 40 women, or the other way around. But if it's balanced, the companies are performing the best. And for me, the men are the key. And this is why I work with men. And thank you for sitting here and helping these ladies, you know, to get on boards, because that's important, that the men understand that actually women can add value, and sometimes even more than other men.
At WOBA, we have plenty of so to say allies, people who are men on different boards who are supporting the cause. So yes, that goes on that direction that you recommended here. So a couple of people registered for the session, mostly for the cyber topics. So I would just like to catch up on that, just to ask you what are the general trends in the sector, and for us people who are outside of it, what we should catch up, and what should we know about cyber in cybersecurity today, and trends, like generally things that we should keep an eye on in order to fully understand the sector and concept and how it affects businesses and individuals.
Okay, you asked so many questions in one sentence.
It's like the worst thing that happens in an interview like this is like when we need to discuss something that's purely technical and things that I don't have.
I'm not.
But I would like to get from you some insights, just to be able to reflect and then continue with this.
Okay, so basically we live in a digital world. Okay, we all use the phones, and sometimes I'm even irritated by that. Like, you know, you enter, like yesterday, or I don't know, last week, I was in Milan, in Italy, and I was in the metro, in the subway, And I was looking around, every single person was on the phone. Nobody was looking around, nobody was talking to each other. They were all on the phone. Okay. That tells you how connected we are to digital devices. The phone is the window or the door to the rest of the world. But basically everything else is becoming digitalized. We talk about robots in the factories. We drive Teslas that are, I don't, but people like Teslas that are basically computers on the wheels. Then I don't need to give you examples. Everybody can come up with at least 5 different examples where digitalization has definitely taken over our daily lives. Now, none of that is possible if it gets hacked. We see the trend of artificial intelligence. Everybody talks about AI. Everybody talks about benefits of AI. Everybody talks about threats. You mentioned something like, will AI take over our jobs? But I hear very few people talking about what happens if AI gets hacked. Let's say, to me, the most terrible example is the one that basically touches human health. One of the benefits of AI in medicine is that AI can compare, for example, pictures of breast cancer worldwide. Okay, like every single woman who ever had to do mammography waits, for the results in a anxious way. And sometimes you get those results and then you have a doctor who looks at it and says, yeah, it's all okay. And then 1 year later, it's not okay. Or 6 months later, it's not okay. Why? Because the doctor has only knowledge of his personal experience, what he has seen on the examples of the breast cancer. If you use AI for recognition of the breast cancer, AI has ability to access millions, if not hundreds of millions, of those Röntgen pictures, X-ray pictures, where they can see and compare basically even the smallest tumor in the early stage. So the AI can actually better discover a breast cancer than a human being. Why? Simply because it has access to millions of pictures that a normal doctor doesn't have. Okay, so far so good. What happens if the AI gets hacked? Basically, if the database with all of those pictures, even better to say AI model, gets hacked, instead of recognizing something as a tumor, it will say it's not a tumor. And then, a human life is at danger because the tumor is not discovered in early stages. So this is one of the examples where I personally, working in the cybersecurity for so many years, I see threats. What happens if your Tesla is hacked and suddenly your brakes are not working? Because Tesla is all about computer. What happens if your airplane is hacked? And I can give you millions, because everything is, airplanes are flying on autopilot. And these are AIs. These are the things that are pre-programmed. They are taking information from the air, the wind and all of that. It's being calculated on fly because an airplane has, thousands of those sensors connecting all the information about everything, getting in computer, and then producing an output for the pilots and autopilots and all of that. So to me, to answer your question, I can talk on this topic forever, but I'm conscious of time. To answer your question about what would I give as an advice to people looking into, first of all, be very careful with your personal devices. Be very careful about not leaving your digital traces everywhere. Erase them. Don't go on public things just like that, public networks. Be careful, because these days it's very easy, specifically with AI, to take your picture and to take your voice, because everybody is leaving things on Instagram, for example, a lot of pictures, a lot of personal voices, combine them in something that can jeopardize your reputation, your safety, or anything else. So that's one example on the personal level. But in general, be careful. Make sure that all of your systems are patched, that you are running the latest antivirus and cybersecurity tools on your systems, whatever you use. Obviously, somebody's only on the phone. Some people are deeper into technology with laptops and anything else. But for every single tool you use, make sure it's absolutely protected. It's on the latest cybersecurity patches, because otherwise it can be very harming to you and your well-being in general.
Can we get back to personal note as a parent in terms of this? What would you say about the fact that we have a huge now penetration of social media in our countries in the region for people who are like between 45 and 55 years old or even older, and their level of understanding what's AI generated content, how do they share data of their family, photos of kids and everything else. It's like, it seems like we are progressing in technology. They are using it, but the level of awareness about it is it's a bit very, very low, and nobody is addressing. Everyone is talking with new generation youth and so on, but we are not addressing this group.
I think it's difficult on individual level, we have to talk about it, and at least and I consider myself part of this cybersecurity community, we should be talking to our friends, our families, whomever, colleagues, everybody, to making them aware to think twice before posting something, before clicking on the links. It could be malicious phishing link, before doing any of these, things. But I believe it should be also on the countries and governments to have the awareness campaigns regularly to warn people about potential harms of using internet in the way that many people are using today. And I don't see these campaigns happening very often. Like in the past, there were a lot of campaigns for, health awareness, like, I don't know, use this, use that. We all know what happened with the COVID and how that was done. I believe that the governments should do more on the awareness of cyber use, because cyber attacks, the ransomwares, it's in trillions now, the damages to the companies that are happening. So it's dangerous. And I'm not going to talk even about the infrastructure. If somebody attacks your we've seen what happened in Portugal. Officially, it was because of the weather, but I'm not sure. So we don't know, but there are a lot of things that can happen. And definitely, I think we all have to be aware and spread the awareness.
We have a couple of questions from the audience. One of them is, when it comes to cybersecurity, any foreseeable challenges related specifically to women? Like, what do you say?
Oh my God, I was reading somewhere recently that, and I don't know which country it was, where it was, how it was, but I just remember that some women found their own picture on internet in the pornography sites, naked, and being put in some porno movies. It was AI, obviously, but it was done in such a way that it looked real. Because there are so many pictures of us on internet, on Instagram, on all of the social media, and some ladies put it just like that some criminals used in a way that they combine the face of the person, the bodies, and all of that in AI, that it looks real. And I think this is, to me as a woman, this is very threatening. And these things will probably happen more and more often. So this was one isolated case where somewhere, somehow, this happened. But my advice to all of the women around, not just women, but men, kids, everybody, boys, because there is no difference anymore. Be careful what you post, and really do the regular checks on yourself on Google. Put your name in Google and see what comes up, and try to delete any spores, anything that is, compromising or not good, or try to limit it. And I know it's difficult. Even I am on Instagram and everywhere, and I sometimes put pictures of myself because it's, it's asked. by the community and everything, but we have to be at least monitor what's on the internet about yourself and try to prevent. If something happens, if somebody hacks your profile, you are at least immediately there and you can take action. If you don't check it, it can spread around as crazy.
Yeah, it seems like we are already a bit too late when it comes to this, because of the, Facebook is there like since people who are penetration here in the region was like since 2008. Like this means that many people have this footprint that you are talking about for at least 15 or years. It's now you come to awareness about some things, but you cannot get back in terms of yeah. But as you said, it's important to start from today when it comes to changing the behaviors. So I remember when you were in Sarajevo, you I think it was no, not in Sarajevo, in Konjic. I think you were describing one thing which stick in my mind. I just want to talk about this narrative before we end session. So I remember you saying you went to Expo, I think, or was it in Dubai? Yeah,
Dubai, yes.
And how you disliked the way the region was portrayed by us from our like institutions actually explaining, for example, Bosnia and Herzegovina to the outsiders and so on. Maybe just to reflect on that, what you shared at that point, and how do we change this narrative? How do we start talking different story about ourselves?
So what was in Expo in Bosnian pavilion, like every other country presented itself by something beautiful, okay? And Bosnia came up with a lot of pictures from the war. And I personally don't like to be reminded about war. When I come to Bosnia and Herzegovina, but not just to Bosnia and Herzegovina, when I come to former Yugoslavia, and I still call it former, I'm sorry for everybody, but I hate the word region. And I'll tell you why, because region can be anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can say region in South Asia, you can call something region in Africa, in America, wherever. Region is just the word for geographical, region.
Okay.
For me, these are, and I understand Yugoslavia is forbidden word for many. So instead of calling it former Yugoslavia, we can call it Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, call it by the names, but don't call it region. That's my philosophy. So whenever I go to those countries, which I love because I grew up there and for me it was my country, I am impressed by the beauty, not just the natural beauty that the countries from Slovenia all the way down to Macedonia have. The nature is fantastic. People are nice. People are friendly. You can still feel and you can feel the hospitality of our people. And you can feel the beauty and you can feel the potential. And you mentioned Energo Invest. That tells you how much we can do if we all together focus on positive and not on negative. Because Energo Invest was born in a time when Yugoslavia was in a positive motion. When all of those people living in a former Yugoslavia were together, they were building something. Nobody was thinking about what's your religion, what's your background, are you for this party, political parties. No, people were working on the future. People were positive. So, and this is what frustrates me when I get to any of those countries that used to be my country in the past. When I get there these days, people are negative. They talk about war, they talk about politics, and politics hasn't changed for the last 30 or 50, 40 years. I don't even remember the years. But to me, don't focus on negative. We are beautiful people, first of all. We are smart people. And I can tell you that from my own experience. I can tell you I'm not smarter than anybody in Bosnia where I grew up. But I'm smarter than many people in Western Europe. I guarantee you that, by all means. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of talents. I see natural resources. I see potential all around me. We were in Konjic looking at that handcraftsmanship that they were doing by hands, producing those beautiful pieces of furniture. To me, it was like, wow. I don't see why not. So for me, I get frustrated when I see people from Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia being negative. I want you to be positive. I'm doing my best to kind of energize everybody and say, hey guys, you can do it. We can do whatever we put ahead of us, but let's look positive. Let's release this complex of being small, being irrelevant, being nobody. And this is the feeling I sometimes get when I get to Sarajevo, for example. People are kind of in some, I wouldn't call it desperate state, but some kind of negative state and not believing in themselves. And all I can tell you guys, we are smarter than many other in Europe. And if we use that potential that we all have in our brains by growing up in that country, by having those genes that taught us to be very improvising and flexible in different situations, sky is the limit. Look at Dubai, and you mentioned Dubai. They started from sand. And of course you can say, but they got money from oil. Yes, but there are some other countries that got money from oil, but they didn't do what Dubai did. So it's all about having a vision, thinking that possible is everything, believing in yourself, and willing to do something with your life and with your country. That's how I feel. And I'm willing to do, whatever needed to help somebody who is living there. Obviously, I don't live there anymore, fortunately or unfortunately, but you never know. Maybe I come back. But we all need to help each other. I really believe country has potential to be Switzerland, specifically Bosnia, but any of these, I've seen some pictures from Serbia, Tara and everything. I mean, Croatia, you don't need to talk about beautiful sea coast, Montenegro with the mountains. I mean, all of these countries have such a huge potential for tourism, but for many other things. And I think it should be used.
Ilijana, I think this was an amazing end for this conversation. I would like to stop here because it's and we are getting people saying it was really great and interesting. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here with us and for us. And I hope we'll have the opportunity to meet once again live in our countries back in the region, the Western Balkans, or we now call it Adria region because it sounds more cool,
Yeah, but it's a good name, Adria region. Call it Adria region.
Yeah.
Don't give it this region. I mean, what is it? Region is geographical term to me, and I don't like my country or my countries to be called just region. We have names, we have history, we have culture. We should keep it. That's my
keep it and tell our story.
Yes.
A bit better, as you said. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.